I'm going to turn to Kate now from Retina UK. So Kate is Research and Development Manager at Retina UK. She is going to talk us through a bit of an overview of the support and services offered by Retina UK, as well as a bit of a whistle-stop tour of what's going on in research for treatments into inherited retinal conditions. So, Kate.
Thank you, Ellen. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. So, hi, everybody. I just want to say it's really tough to follow three amazing panelists who have so candidly shared their lived experience. I don't have any personal lived experience to share. And even though I've worked for Retina UK for 6 years, I always learn something when I hear members of our community speaking. So thank you so much to the three of you. Retina UK, for those of you who don't know us, is a charity that encompasses all of the inherited retinal diseases. So we support affected families and we also fund research. The charity was founded in the 1970s by families who were affected by retinitis pigmentosa, which is one of the more common forms of inherited retinal condition. And they were just really dismayed by the lack of research and awareness at that time. And today the charity's grown into something that provides support to those affected by any inherited retinal condition, not just retinitis pigmentosa. So that includes Leber's congenital amaurosis, or LCA, Stargardt disease, which we've heard quite a lot about, Best disease, which is another central vision problem, something called cone rod dystrophy, choroideremia, achromatopsia, and a whole host of others that are quite rare in some cases, or really rare in some cases. We also consider, as part of our community, those affected by inherited syndromes that include retinal degeneration, so things like Usher syndrome and Bardet-Biedl syndrome. So I'll just talk about our services a little bit to start with. We offer a range of services, including a telephone and email helpline, and that's available to family members, parents, as well as individuals living with the condition. The helpline's open every weekday, as well as Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and can offer practical information and a listening ear. Our team of helpline volunteers, we have a staff paid helpline coordinator, but then you'll be referred on to the most appropriate helpline volunteer, and they all have personal experience of inherited sight loss. Some of them are parents as well as living with inherited sight loss, so they do have real understanding of the challenges. And I can put the information about how to contact the helpline in the chat in a moment, or we can get Ellen to send it out afterwards. We also have a number of peer support groups, both online and in person, where people can get to know others in a similar situation. So Bhavna talked about that importance of peer support earlier, and we find that certainly rings true in our community, across our community. We've actually recently established a young adults group for the 18 to 30 age group. That meets mostly online and is going really well, and is more or less run entirely by the young people themselves now. That group coordinator is a young person living with sight loss. We're also gathering interest in a parents group along similar lines, and if you'd like to know more about either of those, you can email us, services@retinauk.org.uk, but again, I'll put that in the chat. You can also meet other families at our free annual conference, where we have sessions on a range of topics, from research to employment, technology, as well as exhibition stands. I've got a feeling Bhavna will be there. This year we're in London, near Regent's Park, on Saturday the 20th of September, and we are able to offer reimbursement of travel expenses up to a value of £100 for those in the 18 to 30 age group. So if you are supporting a young person in that age group, do bear that in mind. And I think the young adults group themselves are also organising their own social get-together that weekend, so might be worth having a look if you've got a young person in that slightly older age group. There's more information on our website, retinauk.org.uk, and you can also join the conference online if travel isn't possible at all. So life with a progressive condition obviously does present challenges for wellbeing and mental health, and everybody else has touched on that today. 3 years ago, Retina UK developed an online mental health resource called Discover Wellbeing. We know that counselling services and professional mental health services are quite hard to access, and Discover Wellbeing is not designed for a crisis situation. It's not designed to replace professional mental health services, but it is something that can help perhaps head things off at the pass, or help prevent those things from happening in the first place. We worked on that with a mental health charity and also a mental health professional who is herself living with progressive inherited sight loss. And it offers videos and online modules that can be worked through in your own time to help people feel more aware of their emotional well-being and develop practical skills to adapt to life's ups and downs. And there is actually a specific section for family members and others who are supporting someone. So you can access that via retinauk.org.uk/wellbeing, and the link's also at the top of our homepage on our website, and that is really very focused on the challenges of progression and constant adaptation, which others have already talked about. Genetics obviously plays a central role in inherited conditions. There are a huge number of different genes that can be involved in inherited sight loss, and anyone diagnosed with these conditions is entitled to an NHS genetic test to find out or to confirm the cause. And that test will also identify exactly where the spelling mistake is within the gene. And having that information can be really valuable in terms of being best placed to take part in clinical trials or take up treatments that might come along in the future. It can also confirm risk to other family members and children and inform family planning choices later on in life. So we have a dedicated online information resource just about genetics called Unlock Genetics, and that has information about genes, inheritance, genetic counselling and testing services. And you can access that again at retinauk.org.uk/genetics. Or again, that link is also at the top of our homepage. So just quickly moving on to research, despite lots of progress, there is still no treatment for the vast majority of those with inherited retinal conditions. We do have one gene therapy available on the NHS for sight loss caused by a specific gene called the RPE65 gene, and that's probably applicable to less than 100 people in the UK. So for the vast majority, there is nothing available, nothing that people can get their hands on right now. Retina UK funds and facilitates research. So we're currently funding some really exciting laboratory research. As a charity, our funding tends to go more into the laboratory and basic science end. We don't have the funds it takes to run clinical trials, but often our research ends up leading to something, or we hope it would end up leading to something that would move on into a clinical testing. So just a quick flavour of some things we're currently funding that I think are really exciting. We've got one at UCL Great Ormond Street Institute of Child Health, looking at developing what basically amounts to a photoreceptor patch that could be implanted in the eye to repair a small area of retina. So the scientists are actually bioengineering a tiny 3D printed scaffold structure that stem cell derived photoreceptors can be placed into to keep them intact during a special surgical implantation process, which the team is also refining. We're also funding a project in Newcastle that dovetails nicely with that first one, in that the researchers are developing retinal stem cells that are invisible to the immune system so that they won't be attacked when they're transplanted into the retina. So these kind of stem cell based repair approaches are still a few years away from clinical testing. So there's something to keep an eye on for the future. But they are aimed at repairing the retina at kind of later stages of sight loss. We funded a fair few projects on gene therapies over the years, including one that led to the successful treatment of 4 very young children with a very rare form of inherited, of Leber congenital amaurosis, in fact, at Great Ormond Street. Some of you may have seen that in the media earlier this year. I think it made it to the BBC. Gene therapies tend to be aimed at slightly earlier stages of sight loss. They aim to halt progression or slow progression and may even produce some slight improvements in vision. And as I say, they're probably aimed at, the earlier stages. And they are specific to a particular gene. So it's really important you have that genetic test information to be on the ball with those sorts of things. There are also treatments being developed, other types of treatment being developed that are not gene specific. So there will be some people in our community who can't actually get a genetic test result. They might have the genetic test, but at the moment, because the conditions are so complex, there are so many genes that can potentially be involved. Scientists haven't quite figured them all out. They haven't identified them all. And so it's possible that some people will have a genetic test and then be told, actually, we can't identify the gene that's causing your condition with any certainty. But research is looking at ways of tackling the problem without it being specific to a particular gene. So there are some there's one approach that's looking at preserving central vision in retinitis pigmentosa. So retinitis pigmentosa is a condition where peripheral vision is usually lost first and low light vision is lost, but central vision can remain intact for quite a long time. And if we could preserve that for much, much longer, or even forever, that would obviously be a huge bonus. So there are approaches looking at that. There's an approach looking at very late stage sight loss, where you effectively give cells in the retina that don't normally sense light the tools to be able to sense light, and thereby give those cells the ability to send some image information to the brain and sort of take over from the dead photoreceptors that have already deteriorated. That's called optogenetics, and that has reached clinical trial, but is also still being refined in the lab. So really being looked at from all angles. And there are other similar treatments. I could go on for quite a long time and take up far too much time. But obviously we can talk about it a little bit more in the Q&A if there's time. As well as funding research, Retina UK wants to help people take part in studies and clinical trials. We have a lived experience panel that people can join. Obviously, individuals 18 and over can join it themselves, but parents are welcome to join on behalf of their children to hear of things that are going on. We occasionally have studies that ask for parents' experiences. We basically would email you if we hear about an opportunity. If it's not relevant to you, if it's not right for you, you can just ignore it. The opportunities we get told about are occasionally clinical trials, but quite often they're surveys, they're researchers trying to understand more about people's experiences and the things that have helped them or not helped them in order to try and make improvements to services. We also provide research information. Our newsletters often contain research features. We have webinars and podcasts. And if people have a research-related query, we can always do our best to answer that as well. Just a caveat, nobody at Retina UK is medically qualified. We can't give medical advice or interpret reports. That's always, as Ellen said, best done by your own ophthalmologist. So yeah, that's Retina UK in a snapshot and a little bit about what's going on in research.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for that really clear summary of everything that Retina UK offers, and the kind of bits of research and trials that are going on at the moment as well. I know it's really relevant to a lot of people.